Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests that follow us online, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the premises of the Global Center of Excellence on Climate Adaptation in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. The Global Center was launched last November, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share with you what this new center hopes to achieve and why it supports the initiative on water as leverage of resilient cities in Asia. In its 2018 Global Risk Report, the World Economic Forum identifies extreme weather as the greatest global threat facing humanity. Last year, impacts of global climate change again proved a reality and were heartfelt across the world. Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria battered coastal communities across the Atlantic. In Asia and Africa, heavy rains and severe floods killed thousands and caused billions of dollars in damages. It is often only after events like this occur that we fully grasp the immense impact that climate change will have. Yet the Paris Agreement has the ambition to put us ahead of these impacts. On the one hand, Paris sets ambitious mitigation targets designed to keep temperatures rise well below 2 degrees, while on the other hand, urges us to become more resilient to the physical impacts of climate change in a timely manner. Paris was bold on adaptation in that it finally puts adaptation on a par with mitigation. And that's a clear political recognition of the relevance of adaptation. Meeting our commitments on adaptation under Paris requires that we amplify our efforts to adapt to the adverse effects and risks of climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, we have taken 2 initiatives to amplify these efforts. First, the Global Center of Excellence on Climate Adaptation, and second, the Global Commission on Adaptation, which will be launched later this year. Let me share with you our ambition with these 2 initiatives. When I say our ambition, I mean in fact the ambition of a broad group of countries and organizations. The broad support allowed the Netherlands to play a catalytical role in both initiatives. Let me first talk about the Global Center, where we are today. What is its origin and what will it do? At the Conference of Parties to the Climate Convention in Bonn, the Netherlands, UN Environment, Japan and the Philippines, in close collaboration with other partners, such as the Global Environment Facility, multilateral development banks, and the World Resources Institute, launched the Global Center. It's a new international organization in statu nascendi, headquartered in Rotterdam. It will be a truly global center, bringing together Global North and the Global South, as well as stakeholders groups. The center is dedicated to transforming and catalyzing the adaptation agenda by unlocking finance for transformative action at scale, through sharing existing and new knowledge and best practices, and by convening leaders to raise the political importance of the adaptation agenda. In that sense, the center aims to help countries and organizations move from understanding risks to planning the management of these risks, to implementation of action, and to financing it. And finally, to measuring whether this adds up to our global commitments on adaptation. That theory of change is a prerequisite for success. To harness success, the center strongly believes in bringing stakeholders together, sharing experience and jointly defining new solutions and tools that help to move the needle on adaptation. In its initial focus, the center has selected 3 themes to implement this approach. Scaling up ecosystem-based adaptation, defining measurement and effectiveness of adaptation, integrating adaptation in financial decision-making. I say initial. When consulting stakeholders on how to set up the center, we had a growing understanding that while attention to adaptation has risen, it still is not mainstream. The consultations also brought into focus what barriers we need to overcome to mainstream adaptation efforts. Knowledge is not being translated into practice quickly enough. The solutions that do exist are not very visible. Decisions are still made with short-term rather than long-term risks and benefits in mind. In particular, investment models are based on experience with risks in the past and do not take into account new insight into future impacts that are a clear break from the past. Adaptation still feels like a fuzzy concept. It seems difficult to do, especially given all the uncertainties, and it's hard to quantify and measure. This made us realize that it's essential that the political visibility of adaptation be elevated, with a strong focus on solutions. To really impact on the ground, the solutions and messages developed by the Centre and its partners need adequate framing and first-class messages to deliver them. In close collaboration with the World Resources Institute and the World Bank Group, we saw an opportunity to cater for this need by launching a global commission on adaptation later this year. We would hope that the commission does two things. First, demonstrate that adapting to near and long-term climate-related risks improves human well-being, advances sustainable development, and results in better, more sustainable economic growth and security for all, including and especially the most vulnerable. Second, make the case that it's worth the effort for everyone to take climate risks into account and radically change the way we take investment, planning, and development decisions. Just like the Centre, this Commission will be global also. This will be reflected in its governance. The Commission is not Dutch nor a Washington-based initiative. Conveners from across the globe will serve as political patrons of the Commission, politically support its work and convene major meetings and events. The Commissioners will actively engage with key decision makers and practitioners from the financial sector to the grassroots level, both public and private. We currently envisage that the Commission will deliver a flagship report to the UN Climate Summit in September 2019. The Centre, where we are today, will also be the Secretariat of the Commission, assisted by the WRI. The Global Centre recognized early on the potential of the Water as Leverage initiative for innovative transformation to resilience, of which I have talked today. It is about de-risking through knowledge management and scaling up good solutions and unlocking finance through bankable projects. The development and practical implementation in pilots in Asia much appeal to us, and we are grateful for the opportunity to partner. In our side event at the Conference of Parties to the Climate Convention in Bonn last November, Mr. Ovink, Special Envoy for International Water Affairs, presented the initiative as a demonstration of things to come. May I invite you, Mr. Ovink, to take the floor and introduce the initiative Water as Leverage for Resilient Cities in Asia. Thank you.
Good morning. I don't know who's online, but I do want to know who's in the room to get a little, idea who woke up early for Water as Leverage. So, who's Dutch? Okay. Who's not? And where were you from?
Sushanta Mitra, Waterloo Institute for Nanotechnology
Canada.
at Waterloo, Canada.
Wow. Welcome. I'm very sorry, but otherwise the audience will...
Xuan Li. I'm from China, but I work in Netherlands.
Ah, very good. So those were the only two? Ah, there's more.
Well, I'm from Russia, but I also work in the Netherlands, so I feel like that's of more importance.
And you are?
I'm working in a tech startup.
Okay.
So
And you're Alexandra?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have Canada, China, Russia, and the Netherlands in the room, and the world online. Who of you really works in water and water management? It's like almost everyone. The ones that don't, what would you do?
I'm giving a presentation on innovation procurement about the procedure later on.
Yes. So she works on water as leverage, and
I have a design agency, and we do some water projects, but we're not only focused on water topic. So.
very good. So design. Where is? The rest is water? Wow. Okay, cool. Tijmen, thank you so much for having us at the center, which is actually a reality. And I just returned from San Francisco, where I sold the center. I didn't sell it, for real, but I marketed around. So now we have to meet Governor Brown. So the chairs of the Commission on Adaptation have to go to the climate summit. So let's talk about this. But it's really to message also to you that with Paris, adaptation became the partner of mitigation. Before Paris, they were opposites, which of course for people that work in practice is crazy, but people who work in politics, that's very normal. But thanks to Paris, at least on paper, the two are now two sides of the same coin. In practice, in policy, it's still problematic. Adaptation is still perceived as the next best. And coming from Mexico and California in the last week, this challenge of why we need to adapt to that changing future is still a challenge. Well, this is the reason why. This is the blue marble. The picture was taken in 72 by Apollo 17. It was the first singular image of the planet. We never had a singular image before, and it took a lot of effort to take one again. A kiekje in the Netherlands, we would say. A kiekje of the world. And why was it so important? The environmental movement took it on and said, look at it. How vulnerable we are. We only have one. And this is exactly the reason why we have to work on mitigation, because otherwise we won't be able to live on this planet tomorrow. But this is also the reason why we have to work on adaptation, because otherwise this planet will not exist. And we will actually not be able to work on mitigation. So that's another reason. Now you think it's blue, and I'm Henk Ovink, I'm water envoy for the Netherlands. But actually, if you take all the water away, the planet becomes grayish, not so nice anymore, and all the water will fit in this bulb. And for me, it's a striking image because it tells us that water is a scarce good, but it's not treated as a scarce good. It looks like there is enough, but it's the paint in the room, it's the carpet on your floor. It's only this sliver. While we think oceans are deep, the planet itself is far deeper. So water is scarce, and climate change in that connection makes water scarcity or the amount of water when we have rain events and floods even worse. Last year I was struck, and I just returned before I was in California at the WMO Water Conference by David Carlson's, the WMO Climate Director. Do you know the WMO? World Meteorological Organization? Online, I don't know where you are from, but in the Netherlands we have the KNMI, which tells us what the weather will look like. Well, the WMO is the UN KNMI. It's like the global KNMI. And when I was a little boy, I always thought those were the most amazing people. Men and women in white coats, behind, I don't know, in laboratories thinking about the weather. But I trusted them. These were fact-based, these people knew what they were doing, right? And now with the computers and all the modeling, for sure, there's like no doubt that what they tell you helps. And then David came out a year ago presenting the report on climate and said, well, you think we know, but we're now lost. We don't know. We are in truly uncharted territory. And those 3 words hit me. I didn't know what to do, because they say we don't know. The climate change is so massive. The impacts are, it's going off the charts. It's the implications and the impacts of climate change on our world are becoming so unpredictable and so related to everything else that the challenge is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And it means that there is not a one path forward, but also that the urgency to act has never been bigger. This at some point you could say, is this challenge too big? If we're in a despair mode, we might say, but that's why we have Tijmen and others to help us, and you, that despair is not the way forward. But if we look back a year later, the WMO report again shows that no, 2016 was not the record year, it was actually 2017. And probably 2018 will be the next challenge too. Of course. This question will not be put into the Q&A of the document. Yeah, we have to be careful. Everything I say, I just said, that is different than in the call document, changes the call document. Yeah? Okay. Water. Our environmental assessment agency, PBL, did, on my initiative, an amazing study on the geography of future water challenges. Look it up online. It's background material for the call. The future of water, the geography of future water challenges tells us how water is interlinked with everything else. From social and challenges, inequality, wars and conflicts, all the way across economic and environmental despair and destruction, as well as the opposite, the positive. Water links to everything. When we manage, understand, and value it right, water is the key for success, for prosperity, for opportunities. Now that is what the high-level panel on water did, where I served for. Understand water better, value water better, and manage it better. And if we take those 3 lessons into account, we're able to help reach the 2030 agenda. Yes? Yeah. Now, the Geography of Future Water Challenges report tells us that climate change is, the extremes become more extreme, and while we know it, looking into what this means is that wet places become wetter, dry places become drier, hot places become hotter. But it's not only that these extremes become more extreme in the most extreme places, it's also where the most extreme live under these most extreme conditions. Vulnerable people live in vulnerable places all over the world. So this extremity that in the way climate change hits us is also very extreme in those places. Now, you should imagine there's a planet behind these bulbs, but it's not visible anymore. I don't really know why. But if you look at the too much water, you see that, it's everywhere around the world. Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. But if you look at the impact on people, you see that actually only Asia really is lighted up as a massive part. And that means more migration, either because of too little or too much. And these hotspots of migration, as you see in Asia, are turning up. At the same time, urbanization speeds up even more. We have more urbanization around the world. And while those are the places of hope and prosperity, because everything adds up, it's these hotspots of the world, they're also the places of despair. If climate change hits hard in the place of a lot of people and economy, the impact is tougher. But at the same time, the opportunity to mitigate and adapt in these urban cores is best. There's a lot at risk. Not only people, but also dollars, euros, or yen. 52 billion a year in coastal cities by only global flood losses. Well, I just read the IMD competitive index, the business school from Switzerland, that presents the Netherlands went up one place from 5 to 4, and water management was 1. I thought, okay, yeah, I know why we need that, to couple that. I'll skip this. The colors are amazingly crazy. I don't know what happened. So, doesn't really matter. A map of the world that tells us again where those 52 billion hit home. Professor Hallegatte did this study, and it shows that assets at risk in 2050 because of sea level rise, storms, surges, anything related to climate change, in hundreds of cities around the world. If you add them all up, again, it's Asia. It's the east coast of the United States, and it's the Netherlands. Those 3 regions of the world. And then you would say Amsterdam. And the first time I read only the summary of the report, I thought, oh, we're number 9. But then you see that Rotterdam is number 12, which is never in the top 10, so you think they're not vulnerable. But here we are in Rotterdam, number 12. And if you add them up and the rest of the Netherlands, we're at number 3 or 4 in the world with assets at risk. So we're competitive also in that way with Asia, not the way you want. There's another striking figure to this map that doesn't show, and that is that this is 2050. This is the year where Africa has doubled, and this is also where there's no real assets at risk, but a lot of people. So it tells us also that finance should not be the only way to look at vulnerability. If finance and our financial risks are the only drivers for, for action, then the poor and the vulnerable of the world will lose out. And that's not only in Africa, that's definitely true also in Asia. There's an unequal flood risk within cities. Poor people live in poor places all over the world, and in cities, these impacts increase. Timon already mentioned the World Economic Forum report. Every year they present a risk report. That risk report puts climate change, environmental risk, and water risk in the top 3. Water is the number 1 risk for this decade, 2015-2025, according to the World Economic Forum. But there's another part, 2 other parts. One, it's about urgency or acuteness. Likelihood and impact of all these risks increase every year. So it's getting worse, and there are more. So that means that tomorrow is worse than yesterday. And I joke a bit, but it's not a real joke, that when you bring your kids to bed and say, did you have a nice day? And they will say, yes, mommy or daddy, that you actually have to respond, well, you better, because tomorrow is worse. That should be the driver for us to change, right? We should not have a future where every day we have to tell our kids or grandchildren that tomorrow is worse. And I remember I was in London a couple of weeks ago at the London School of Economics, and we did a book talk on a book I wrote, and Joe Da Silva from Arab, the director who runs their development group, was my co-presenter. We had a discussion, and she said, I all of a sudden realized a year ago, looking at my kids, that they know, she read a report that we're getting older, and she looked at her kids and she thought, they actually will see the year 2100. It's not my grandchildren, it's my kids. It's our kids that will see the year 2100. And then she realized, that's going to be a planet of destruction, despair, wars, and conflict if we don't act now. A 4-degree world is not a great place to live for humankind. Might actually be for others. and the planet will not go away. But if we want to be there and live in peace, prosperity, in a sustainable, sensible way, we have to change. So that it really hit her, like the urgency is so massive, and it's so close. It's our kids. It's not the next generation. No, it's our kids. Obama said we're the first generation to fully grasp this, and the last generation to actually deal with this, to mitigate and adapt. If we don't, we're lost. There's a dark side of the day, good side of the day. We have to be careful that before you know it, we are lost. There are clear interdependencies between all those risks. Social, environmental, cultural, and economic. And that means comprehensively and inclusively deal with it helps in mitigation strategy as well as in adaptation strategy. Now, I have to speed up. I have a minute or less. Yeah, okay. We're here. This is our future. Scary. This is our past. This is where Trump lives. I didn't say this. No, sorry. This is the past. This is where populism lives, where we think things are simple. The future is challenging. We know this. This is where our young live. This is what they like too. They can deal with this. I'm 50 plus. Anyone in this room who's 50 plus often is scared about this because we don't know how to deal with it. It is because there is a disconnect. I have to really move fast between the past. We like to repeat our mistakes from the past, being very non-responsive, and it leads to a disastrous future. If we respond to our past, we rebuild in light of disasters, improving a little. But if we have to be able to understand this, if we can understand this, we have to be able to build upon that future and be proactive. And that's exactly what Water as Leverage is about. It demands a systems approach. La 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 la. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing this morning. That's true. That was the center, didn't you see? Yeah, it was nice, eh? Yeah, yeah. Always, yeah, yeah. No, it is. Yeah. So, when I worked in the United States for President Obama in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, I developed a competition to deal with this. A competition to deal with the challenges climate change brought to a city. A competition where next to infrastructure disaster, social disasters impacts were critically important. And the competition was really about how can we leapfrog, how can we grasp the future, leapfrog into it and come up with solutions that address those challenges and not respond to the past and not rebuild what we lost, but build something better. And not only by engineers and designers, but by all. A competition that challenged everyone and everything to do better with each other. So we had 10 teams and 500 plus organizations and thousands of people working for months in this region on the ground, rethinking what would actually help. And not thinking about how you get the police or the army faster to the places that were hit, but make those places more resilient so they were able to deal with that. We came up with 10 teams in 10 places, looking at this is Manhattan, the swamp of the Meadowlands, MIT team with Zus and Urbanisten, redesigning that natural infrastructure, building with nature, could actually increase or decrease vulnerability and increase opportunity. The big U with the big team looking at Manhattan as an asset to protect, not with a wall, but community-led efforts. Around the bay of Long Island, looking again at our environmental asset and coming up with a room for the river program. Off the coast of Staten Island, building eco-barriers that will help increase environmentally and the ecological part of the... Sorry? Very good. And who are you?
I'm with Roy. I work for eConcrete.
Yes, this is eConcrete. You were part of the escape team. and we're, it's up for building. Eco barrier that reduces the surge impact, at the same time increases environmental ecological quality of the water and creates the opportunity for tourism. Far off the coast, WXY West 8 team looking at a new set of barrier islands to protect the whole coast for those surges. We selected 6 as winners, allocated $1 billion almost, replicated nationally and internationally, and now in the Bay Area, and that's why I was there. Another challenge, not with a disaster, but pre-disaster. Now, this is exactly what we want to bring to the world. This type of innovation by collaboration, bringing the talent of the world to the places and working there on the ground with everyone and everything. And that means that you have to be comprehensive in your analysis, rigorously comprehensive in your analysis and research, and at the same time very inclusive. This cannot be a project for others, this is only with everyone. If you're not able to work on the ground in the places at risk with the talent of these communities, forget it. You have to be on the ground. There cannot be a solution for them, it's a solution with them. So the talent we need in these places is social talent as much as cultural talent, as much as economic, as well as environmental. So it's engineers, design, social scientists, politicians, NGOs, community workers, across everything. That is the way to proceed. And not only from the beginning and then say, from the start until the end. And that is water as leverage. We changed the mechanism of the coalition. What you would normally do is, in the beginning, you would have different people and organizations in the room than in the end. Inception. There's no investor, no MDB, no FMO, no Minister of Finance. It's designers and community workers, they think good things. And at a certain point, they move into the political arena. Everything's changed again. And after that political arena, we go to assess. No, it's failing because then the buy-in from the beginning and the understanding is lost. The way to evaluate is not incorporate in that first step. And the implementation necessity is left out of the room. And in the end, when we get to implementation, the people that first were part of the inception, that had the ambition and the ideas are left out. They don't understand anymore what's happening to their project. So changing the coalition means that everyone is in the room at every step, not with the same amount of time, but with the same amount of dedication. So that's why we partnered with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. That's why we partnered with FMO, our Dutch development bank. They are in the room for the beginning. Well, in the end, they will be able to provide the funding for the implementation. But they have to understand innovation. If they don't understand what we are doing to build in these places, they can never help us allocate any funding to innovative projects. At the same time, if we don't have the talent with us along the whole process, we're not able to evaluate in the end. So that's what's changing. Sandra will tell more. There's a team here from Water as Leverage. Robert Proos, RVO, the Dutch Enterprise Agency, and Sandra Schoof, also RVO, Dutch Enterprise Agency. Both on the team, and I forgot your name. Carla Dekker, RVO, and we have another RVO. No, yeah. So Dennis van Peppen, who's their boss, actually is watching online or in a meeting. We have a team at RVO. RVO guides this process. And the call is open online, and you still have 3.5 weeks. Go, Sandra.
There we are. Welcome to the online streamers as well. So this is the point where Henk was telling you about that we have to act proactively, because otherwise we cannot anticipate on the future to save the world, to put it in a very simple way. And just one more practical, the questions and answers will be after the presentation of Carla, and then we will close the live stream because it's really difficult to do this on live stream, but all the questions and answers will be published online. All right, so that's that for now. Well, this is why we chose Asia, because yes, the too much, too little, and too polluted water is everywhere in the world. But there is definitely a sum up of these kind of problems in the region. And this is to. It's a bit straight. Yeah, okay. This is the normal type of. Okay. This is the normal type of project management that you probably all know. So you have the pre-project preparation, you have the feasibility phase, and then you have the implementation phase. The Water as Leverage program is in the pre-preparation phase. So that's the inception phase where Henk was telling you about. So the millions that usually will not, the pre-investment usually that you have to do yourself, is the phase where Water as Leverage is in now. So that's also the quote that we have, that you need millions to spend billions wisely. There is a lot of money available for the implementation and for the feasibility phase, like the technical assistance with the development banks, but also in the implementation phase, you all know. But that's part of, one of the reasons why we focus on the pre-project preparation phase. Okay. Well, this is the urgency that Henk talked about. I don't have to repeat this. These are the principles behind Water as Leverage. So creating an enabling environment. So the learning by doing element is in Water as Leverage is one of the pillars to be basically. The second one is to match long-term and short-term. Long-term comprehensive planning and short-term innovative transformation, which means, for example, with Kulna, that all the proposals that will be developed there will have to fit or give added value to the Bangladesh Delta plan that is already there, 2100. Well, the involvement of the banks, like Henk also told, is very important from the beginning, and the idea is that with the results of the call for action with the Water as Leverage program, the teams can take up we'll talk to the banks and see how the feasibility and implementation phase will go. And the design-driven solutions or the design-driven collaboration is a very important one. That's also one of the reasons that you have to compose multidisciplinary teams to get the engineering side, but also the creative side and the community side together. So these are the 3 cities we're talking about. You probably know. Who knows Kulna? Who's been there? That's 2, 3. Oh, okay, not too bad. Semarang, who's been there? 1, 2, 3, 4 persons. And Chennai? None. Oh, 1, 2, 2, 3. Okay. No, well, not too bad. So I will start with Kulna, the pond city amidst the delta. Kulna is in the largest delta of the world. It's also in the Sundarbans, Sundarbans, the largest mangrove forest in the world as well. Kulna is at the moment has water scarcity, but also one of the major problems is water logging, because of among others that that they are building in the canal, so the water cannot go away. And one of the problems or challenges Kulna is facing as well is salinization, because they pump their drinking water from the underground water. The water is getting more and more salty. Semarang is called in the water as leverage the sinking city between the coast and the hills. So Semarang is the main city is in the lower part. It's sinking because of the pumping of water from the deep aquifers. Land subsidence obviously is a major problem or challenge there. And the urbanization in Semarang is huge, so the city is expanding uphill. Opposite to Kulna, which does not have a large population growth from itself, but is growing because of climate refugees. So that's a big difference. I think that's for now on Semarang. And then we have Chennai, the lake metropolis by the sea. Chennai is the second largest port in India and the fifth most populated metropolitan in India as well. Chennai is growing, expanding very rapidly by another 30% in 2030. So that's huge. Chennai has historically the culture and water in Chennai are historically very intertwined. So that's interesting because the temples, for instance, they have temple ponds and water tanks. So you can actually see that water is part of their culture. The coast in Chennai is eroding. And they have the water pollution, especially because of the sewage coming out in the rivers, is a major challenge as well. And like in Kulna, they have at the moment they have water scarcity, and salinization is a major problem as well. So these are all the challenges, very, very broadly in the three cities. And this is where we are now in the process of water as leverage. So we did the city selection and the research of the challenge, the research describing the challenges of the three cities last year. With the support of the Global Center of Excellence on Climate Adaptation, and by the and the teams will start in July. So until 18th of June, teams will be able to submit their bid, and we will end in April, March, April next year. With the teams delivering proposals for urban water projects with a focus on physical infrastructure. And more in detail, during the first phase, which will be until December, there will be local workshops, 2 local workshops, one I have to put it rightly. So there will be local workshops in each of the 3 cities in September and also in December. And at the end of December, there will be the midterm review in which the deliverables of the teams will be evaluated by the advisory committee. And then in March, there will be a 3rd round of local workshops in the 3 cities, where the 2 teams per city will be present. And then in the beginning of April, the teams will present their final end results to the advisory board. and there will be the and these are the members and observers of the advisory board, one of which is the Global Center of Excellence on Climate Adaptation. Of course, the 2 banks are in it as well. 100 Resilient Cities is a partner network that is important as well. And I forgot to mention that with the local workshops that are, of which the aim is for the teams to support them and to get in touch with local stakeholders and the cities who will be present there as well. That will be organized in cooperation with Partners for Resilience, a knowledge network, and also with 100 Resilient Cities. So these are 5 basic approaches for the combining urban planning and water management. This is what we developed in the research last year. These are you can see these are as kind of guidelines for you or inspirational pathways maybe. For you to think about an approach in the city you would like to work with your team, and to see which of the urgent questions or you would like to answer during the 9 months, leading of course to a proposal. All the information that we have will be on the website, but I think most of you know it already. And all the information on the pathways and of the 3 cities describing the challenges, but also inspiration for you to develop your approach is in the Setting the Scene document, and that will be on waterasleverage.org. This is the research from the result of the research last year. And for persons or organizations that are looking for team members or are still looking for a team, we have created a LinkedIn discussion group that you can join and open for everybody who wants to join. Like I said before, the design, the blue part is called Design Here. That is the pre-project preparation. At the end of in April, the end results of the Water's Leverage program will be delivered, and then there will be organized. We call it a smooth transition to the feasibility phase, and then it's up to the teams to start working with their banks. So this is the quote from Henk. He's there sitting right there. It's a bit strange, but this is all about the proactive approach, and that it's not about replicated the solutions of the past, but it's all about innovation, collaborating from the start, being inclusive and comprehensive. Thank you very much. Here's all the information, and I will give the floor now to Carla.
Thank you, Sandra. Welcome. My name is Carla Dekker. I work for the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, and I'm helping with the procedural part of this challenge. I'm not going to explain the whole procedure again. I hope you've read a lot of the documents already. I will want to zoom in on some of the questions that have been asked earlier. So, and at the end, of course, you can ask all kind of questions about the whole procedure, but that will be outside of the live stream. And you can see my previous presentation already in the previous, how do you call it, stream, when it was streamed, the streamline. I just put all the documents that are very relevant for this call for action, put them on a slide. So in the call for action you can find what we're looking for, setting the scene, really important, gives you the background of all the 3 different cities. The Q&A that will be updated regularly. We just published it yesterday with all questions that have been asked about the challenge or about the procedure. Then of course the guidelines, how to submit your proposal, and how we will evaluate your proposals, etc. There's the application form, the proposal format, the contracts, also important to read. There's still one unsolved thing in the contract, that's about the payment schedule. We're working on that and hope to inform you about the intended payment schedule as soon as possible. And there's of course what will you be delivering at the end of phase 1 and phase 2, and we've developed a format for that. For who is this call? And remember, we have this deadline, 18 June, 12 o'clock Central European Standard Time. Very important, be on time, because to make it, to give everyone the same chances, we have this deadline, and if you're late, your proposal will not be evaluated. We're looking for internationally operating multidisciplinary teams with a lot of different expertise. That's been explained previously. We're looking for innovative and comprehensive urban solutions to address urgent water and climate adaptation needs in the 3 cities we have mentioned. I always say, just read the call documents, and if something you don't understand, ask us, and we'll explain it. Be on time, be clear, be specific what you want, and involve the right expertise, experience, etc. We are working with one main contractor who is our contact point, and he will be working with several subcontractors but is responsible for the end results. If you want to send in more than one bid, be sure that you have enough capacity and expertise in all your bids. In addition, for whom? We've received questions about that. The firms and the experts that were involved in the research that has been done last year for the preparation of this call, they have not been part of the preparation for the call for action, so there's no conflict of interest, and they are allowed to submit a bid or be part of a team. Then there was a question about who can be in the team from affiliated organizations. For example, public authorities, the ultimate beneficiaries, we call them in the call for action. They cannot be included in the team. But of course, you can cooperate with them. The composition of the team. We talked about water, climate, urban, financial experts. You don't have to have all these expertise, or maybe you want to have other expertise in your team. It's important that the approach that you describe in your bid determines the composition of the team. And, well, your team needs to cover all expertise to translate your approach into conceptual designs in phase 1 and also the proposals in phase 2, so make sure that you have for both phases all the expertise on board. We had also a lot of questions about in-kind investments. We believe that the ambitions of the Water as Leverage Challenge require more from a team than we can pay you for, so we think you will be needing more time and money. but we don't require a certain percentage of these investments. That's up to you. Depends on how challenging your proposal is, how much work you need to do. The evaluation of the bids will not look into how much you're going to invest yourself, but fits your approach with the experts and the time you want to spend on this project. We can give no guarantee that the end result of your team will fit into the box of a potential funder. But we hope that we increase the chance that your result will fit into a box by having the FMO and the Asian Infrastructural Investment Bank participate from the very beginning. But as we already explained, it's an innovative way of working. It's a pilot, so we will be learning on the way, and we hope that you will be with us all the time. Something about competition, cooperation, also received their questions about that. We have competition in the bidding phase, but of course you can talk to other teams, maybe cooperate, coordinate, whatever, but your proposal will be evaluated on its own merits, not on if you're cooperating with other teams. After contracting, of course, we will encourage that you seek cooperation with the other team in the same city if that is relevant. So this was a very short presentation, only the highlights of the Q&As, the questions we received. Here are the email addresses, website addresses, and you can still send in questions and we will answer that and update our Q&A document on the website. Thank you for your